Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and today is our Game Week 35 National League predictions and preview, proudly sponsored by Cards Accepted. As always, tonight I'm joined by Paul Franklin. Paul, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Not bad at all. Looking forward to a bumper midweek selection of National League games one to predict and then sort of see how we get on and how they all get on tomorrow, because I think there's some games in here, Luke, that can affect the table both at the top end and the bottom end as we get into that last 2 months of the season.
Yeah, it really is getting to the business end of the season. And of course, that is the most exciting time because it's so open, the division, particularly this season. I know a podcast would always like to build up like the National League or the division that they're covering. But, this season compared to the previous year and perhaps even the Wrexham and Notts County year, there's so much going on across the whole division this season compared to previous seasons. It's just making it so entertaining. Like usually at this point of the season, there's usually about 5 or 6 sides that have probably got not too much to play for, either heading towards just, probably being safe or can't really go for promotion. Whereas, the majority of the season have still sides in the division have still got a lot to play for this season. So it's certainly an exciting one. Of course, towards the top at the moment, Barnet and York are battling it out to see who can actually go on to win promotion automatically this season. Speaking of races, we've got our own race going on at the moment in terms of the Prediction League. We speak about it being the best time for sides to come into form. For example, Barnet. Unfortunately for me, you've suddenly come into form in the final end of the season, and you've actually took the lead in the Predictions League.
I have, yeah, 10 points in the last 2 weeks. I mean, we joked, didn't we, on Thursday night? There's 24 points to play for, and between us, Luke, we got 4 points. So it just goes to show how hard it is to predict. So, yeah, I've snuck ahead, but was it 12, 13 games this week to predict? On Tuesday night and Wednesday night. So, gosh knows. I'm not very confident because there's some really tight games in there this week to look at and try and predict.
In 13 games, Paul, there's only 12 fixtures it could ever be, to be honest, in this division. There's only 24.
Oh, you're right, yeah. Maths wasn't my strong point, Lou. I haven't been to school for a number of years. So, yeah, please do forgive me, whoever's listening. Oh, yeah, you're right. It can only be 12 games.
To be fair, I only scraped to pass at GCSE level in maths. I'm pretty happy. I'm done with that now, to be honest. The amount of stats that I've probably got wrong, everyone's probably caught me out on that in the past and just not said anything. But no, yeah, there's plenty to discuss tonight. If you want to get involved in the topics that we discuss and the games that we're previewing, please get involved in the live chat. If you are watching this afterwards, which the majority of people do, let us know in the comments your predictions for the games, any topics that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. Or if there's anything you actually disagree with us on the podcast, then please make us aware of it. And then we'll actually probably reply in the comments on our points back in that. So, yeah, if there's anything you disagree with, then please also let us know. We'll come to the live chat quickly, and then we will get on with the predictions. Of course, a full fixture list today, so there's going to be a lot to discuss. Of course, like I said, we're probably going to go in a lot of detail into these games and make that the main focus of this podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you would like to become a channel member, it's just £2.99 a month. You'll get early access to certain interviews that we do in the future, certain videos that we do as well. And you also get to use custom emojis in the live chat for your specific club. So, for example, we've got someone called Caroline, who's an Aldershot fan, probably the longest serving member now. She can actually use the Aldershot badge in the live chat, which is a pretty cool feature if you're involved in the live chat and the comments. Anyway, starting things off, Stephen Jones is with us tonight, a Fylde fan. He said, "Hi, guys. Hope you are well. Up the Fylde." Yeah, good point for Fylde. Against Gateshead, a side that they've got a very good record against. I know Gateshead seem to have a number of bogey sides in this division, Halifax being one, but also AFC Fylde. But yeah, a good point for Fylde now. They're now 3 unbeaten.
Yeah, we talk about new manager bounce or the change in management changes the fortunes, and it certainly seems to have happened with Fylde at this present time. They're not missed Kevin Phillips. I don't know what's changed to make them better, but again, getting unbeaten in 3 is always a good run at any time in the season in the National League. But when you're scrapping for that relegation place, to get those points on the board when others around you, the likes of Maidenhead, probably aren't. It's that's a big advantage. Going into the as you called it, Luke, the business end of the season.
think what's frustrating for Fylde at the moment is the fact that they've done so well. And actually, the previous 5 games, they've only had 1 defeat. They've gone to Altrincham, won there. They've gone to Halifax, won there. Got a good point at Gateshead away from themselves recently. Yet they're still in the bottom 4, which is just showing you how the sides towards the bottom have significantly improved towards the end of the season, which they usually do. But if you actually look at what were projected for sides to survive this season, it felt like all it needed was one of the sides to go on a good run of form and they'd be out of it because the side was performing so poor at that time. Now, the sides, we're seeing the likes of Maidenhead find results out of the hat that nobody would expect, Fylde, yet those sides still find themselves in the bottom 4. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then we've also got AJ, who's in tonight, Paul.
Oh, hang on, bear with me. So I was just looking at the league. I was just looking at the league table, familiarised with it. Evening, Luke. Excited for this one. The title race is coming in a little bit. Oldham must win for York and Vegan Rovers. I still think Barnet will win the league. They did Oldham dirty, a big one. What does TMR mean?
Tomorrow. Get with it. It's second.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, listen. Barnet have shown their credentials massively over the last couple of weeks, haven't they? 4-0 and 3-0 wins against York and Oldham. Blimey, 2 strong National League teams. Yeah, Oldham have, where other clubs have done well in January, restructured their squad, thinned it out, got a bit of fresh blood, whatever you want to describe it, it's worked in reverse for Oldham, and they're really not having a good time of it at the moment. And, they've got a tough one away at Boston in the week. You'd like to think they probably win that. They need to win that. But I think you're right, AJ. It's Barnet to lose. We said that on Thursday night, didn't we, Luke? And they've only gone and proven that again. And they're at home on Tuesday, which always gives them a bit of an advantage as well.
Yeah, more favourable fixture as well for Barnet. I think all fixtures are favourable, but they're very strong favourites coming into this one. You look at some of the results to get maximum points out of York, Oldham, and Rochdale is very, very impressive. Considering those sides, all defensively very strong, and they're absolutely blue. Particularly Rochdale and Oldham away, which is ridiculous for Barnet, and they are certainly well on track now to win the National League this season. Also, if you look at the remaining games now for Barnet, they're actually, a lot of the fixtures are against sides towards the bottom half of the division. They've played the majority of the top 7. I think they've got Altrincham to play, and I think they do have Gateshead as well. Apart from that, they haven't got anyone else to play in the top 7. So the majority of the fixtures for them are very favourable, where I think York have still got to play Forest Green, I believe. Of course, they've got Altrincham tomorrow night. Got a number of tough fixtures as well. And we're going to come on to Oldham and Barnet in a little bit more detail as we do get on with the predictions. Lee is with us tonight. And of course, the Wrexham fan that always seems to tune in. Welcome to the stream, Lee. And then Colin's in, Paul.
Evening, Luke and Paul. Hello, Colin Dilbo. How are you?
He's a Gateshead fan himself. Of course, don't know if that's a disappointing result, because it's such a bogey side fan. But I suppose when you look at in terms of where they are in the league and yourselves, perhaps it is a little bit of a disappointing result. What's the scores on the doors? So we get them up now, and then just to give people a sneak preview of how it's doing. You'll be liking this, Paul, to be honest. It's took long enough.
Yeah, all right. So take it until March to get ahead of Luke. But a 3-1 win on Saturday. I think I was just more consistent with the draws, I think it was. And 2 points ahead, 12 games to play for tomorrow, plus obviously coming Saturday. So thick and fast at the moment, Saturday, Tuesdays, and it's likely to change more than once in the next few weeks, I should imagine, Luke. Yeah,
perhaps you could actually extend the lead even further. You never know. We might have a title race like the Barnet York one that was expected earlier, where it's going to go down to the final day, or perhaps like we saw Man United and Man City in was it 2011-12 when they went down to the final day. Perhaps we're going to have our own title race this season. It makes a change compared to the previous year, though. I have to admit, Paul, it was done and dusted with like 10 fixtures to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I was playing for Pride quite early on, so I'm glad that how many fixtures are there? About 13? Is there 12, 13, 14 fixtures? Depends on what's played what. So still plenty of points to play for, Luke. Still plenty of points to play for.
this time last season, I could just sit here like that and just throw the predictions out there, to be honest. But no, it's good to have it a little bit more competitive this season. But no, we've also got Jan in tonight who said, evening, lads, welcome to the stream. Jan, it's good to... John, sorry, actually. I do apologise. It's good to see you here tonight. And then we've also got JK, Paul.
The pool predictions stocks keep rising, so keep investing. Keep investing, Jake. Keep investing. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what I say. You've got to come into it in the business end of the season. You said on that winning streak, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm not Oldham at the moment. I'm more like Gateshead, I think.
I've got a really good idea for us to make a load of money. Start doing betting odds for the Predictions League. If people like Jake are up for that, then we'll certainly start that. You can 5-1 for Paul to win the game week, perhaps.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Please don't start putting betting odds on me. Blimey, that's too much pressure.
We've had Declan as well in tonight, and he said the Fylde curse continues for the Heed. Should have won mine 60 points. Probably only need 10 or 11 from last 12. Yeah, I believe that's just to secure a playoff spot. For me, Gateshead at the moment, I don't think they can particularly lose in the position they're in at the moment. I think they'd happily take a playoff spot. They're well on track to finishing inside the playoffs. And I think, if anything, the more optimistic fans, I think the only way they should be looking is actually going up. Oldham below them. I know we're quite negative on them at the moment, but I think we've got good reason to be. It doesn't feel like they're going to have any issues in terms of overtaking Gateshead the way it's going at the moment. Of course, that can quickly change. And then it feels like there's a bit of a gap there from the likes of Halifax and Altrincham to actually be able to catch Gateshead now. I think it takes some doing for Gateshead to drop below those two. So for me, I think Gateshead should only be looking up at the moment. Forest Green, I know they won on Saturday, but you look at the form overall, they are kind of slowing down a little bit, Forest Green, in the amount of wins they're getting. And I think they've got the second most amount of draws in the division behind, I believe, is it Hartlepool? I think you've got the most draws in the division at the moment. So for me, overall, Forest Green, in my opinion, are actually catchable, because I don't know about you, Paul, but I personally feel the title race is out of reach now for them. I can't see them catching York or Barnet, if I'm being honest. I think those two are a lot better than Forest Green overall. If you actually watch them, is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, I mean, they're 9 points behind. They've got a game in hand. That's 6 points. That's a 2-win reverse. And when you look at how York and Barnet are doing, you can't see them giving up 2 wins that easily, where you can see Forest Green. I mean, Forest Green play your boys Halifax tomorrow night. That's not an easy fixture for them to go into. So, yeah, I think Forest Green are more likely to draw a game or lose a game than I think Barnet and York are at this present time. So I think you're right. The consolidation for Forest Green will to be in that top, number 2 or 3 to get that advantage in the playoffs. I think Gateshead have got to try and push as high as they can, be it 4th, or can they catch Forest Green in 3rd? It's not unsurmountable. It's not unsurmountable for any of these teams to sort of change around. But I think form has to change drastically one way or the other in some of these positions in the league for them to be changing. So, yeah, I think Forest Green need to just consolidate, get in that top 3. Gateshead just need to get in that top 7, and then it's a bum fight under them to who finishes where, really.
100%. And I think as well, when we speak about the title race, if you look at Forest Green's remaining fixtures, we spoke about Barnet having quite a nice run towards the end of the season in terms on paper. If you look at those teams, of course, that can be very different how it turns out. But Halifax away, Forest Green have got York away. They've got to play Southend, who are hunting down a playoff spot at the moment. Gateshead at home, Oldham at home. There's some really tough fixtures in there. And you look at those other fixtures as well, the likes of Fylde away, a Fylde side that's improving at the moment, looking to try survive. We mentioned it the other week about being the silly season now. We see a lot of ridiculous results where sides towards the bottom seem to pull it out of the bag against the sides, the better sides in the division, because they're that desperate to get the points. I think form goes out of the window. And you look Fylde away, Wealdstone away. There's some really tough fixtures, I think, for Forest Green compared to the likes of Barnet, who are above them. So I could see Gateshead catching them come the end of the season and Forest Green falling into 4th place. Although they do have a 7-point gap at the moment. Also tonight we've got B Army with us up the Barnet. Welcome to the stream, B. And then we've also got Christopher with us. Evening, gents. Welcome to the stream, Christopher. Collins also said, have to disagree with you, Declan. I think 75 or 76 to make the playoffs. That could be something we come on to tonight when we look at the table at the moment. I haven't actually worked out what it's projected at the moment to actually finish inside the playoffs this season. All Things City said, firmly bricking it tomorrow. You read. I think for York at the moment, what's difficult is the fact that if you have one bad week in this division, you're not gonna be top of the league. There's gonna be a gap between you and Barnet, or vice versa. If it were Barnet went on a bad run, if you have two bad weeks in this division, the title race is more or less gone, and that's something York can't afford to do now. If they lose on Tuesday night and Barnet win, it's going to be very, very hard for York to catch them. At the moment, I still think they're holding on. I think York have done well to react to that little slip up, losing to Barnet, and then also dropping points against Halifax. They've done very well in the previous couple of fixtures, to beat Hartlepool away from home. I know Hartlepool aren't on the best of form at the moment, but overall, their home form is pretty good, and it's a fairly difficult place to go, I'd say, in terms of actually going there and winning this season. But then to also beat Maidenhead, a side that, a lot of the better sides, you could say, in the division seem to struggle against, to go there and win. For me, they've done very well, York, and I think you'd just be a little bit frustrated that the likes of Barnet haven't slipped up when you may have expected them to drop points to the likes of Oldham and Rochdale, who are doing well in the division. YouTube Centres has come in and said, where is the Conference League playoff final being held? I believe it is Wembley this year, which is, I don't know, a good thing. Perhaps I think the majority of people would say, is that something you'd agree with, or do you think perhaps it should be elsewhere?
I personally, and it's hard to manage, but it should probably be in a stadium that's accessible for both teams.
Yeah.
If Gateshead get in the playoff final and Eastleigh get in the playoff final, that's a long way to go for both sets of fans. I know that's an extreme example because you don't know whether they'll get there, but if Barnet was getting it, it'd be much easier for them because they're local to North London. So I think, from a perspective of maximising the crowd and building an atmosphere, then should it be more regional depending on who gets through? But it's very hard to do that, Luke, because we know they have to all be booked up prior to knowing who's going to be in it. And, it's Wembley, for the sake of the players and the management and the clubs involved, what a fantastic day out. And I wouldn't want them to miss out on playing at Wembley. It's every kid's dream to play at Wembley, and it's every fan's dream to see their team at Wembley. So from that perspective, I think it's superb. I think sometimes maybe depending on the teams in it, does the atmosphere get a little bit lost? Can it be regional? But you completely understand that there's a calendar to adhere to. They've got to put these in for months in advance for all different reasons, logistically, policing, all that sort of thing. So. But yeah, it would be nice, I think, just to maximise the crowd if that could be managed. But listen, if you're a fan of a club that are getting to Wembley, if you can go by hell or high water, you'd probably make sure you could get there. So I don't think it's unsurmountable for anyone to get to Wembley, and it's a great day out for anyone who wants to go.
I think for me, I should say, the appeal to get to Wembley as a Halifax fan now probably isn't as big as other people's opinions now in the division in a playoff final, because I've seen my side at Wembley, and I think Halifax as well have been to Wembley twice in the past 8 years or so, which is pretty impressive. So for me now, if we got in a playoff final, I wouldn't be particularly that bothered about it being at Wembley. I'd probably want it somewhere like Old Trafford. I just think it's something a little bit different, and I think in this division, you've got the opportunity to get to Wembley with the FA Trophy. That's what that's all about. I honestly don't think that most people, and people will disagree with me, I think the appeal for the FA Trophy is to get to Wembley. I don't think it's to actually win it. Obviously, everyone wants to win it. Once you're there, you want to win it. But for me, when the FA Trophy starts, I'm like, oh, this is a Wembley trip. We could go to Wembley here. And of course, when you get there, you want to win. But I don't think, oh, yes, that's an FA Trophy to add to the collection. And I think it's the same with, used to be called the Checkatrade Trophy, I believe, in League One and League Two. I don't think supporters of EFL clubs really think, oh, we can win the Checkatrade Trophy. I think they see it as, oh, it's a day out to Wembley for me. Whereas now, I think because me personally, I've been to Wembley with Halifax. If we win a playoff final, we want somewhere more local, perhaps where the atmosphere could be a little bit better. Because I think if we're being honest, the majority of sides in this division aren't going to pack out Wembley in one side. Most would probably take 10, 15,000 at most. That's probably what Halifax, I'd say, would take. Of course, if Oldham, Southend, sides like that got there, it might be a little bit different. But I just think if they had it at like Villa Park, perhaps, Old Trafford, I just think it'd be a lot better for me personally. But yeah, I suppose it's all about different opinions, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that. And then Jake, someone said, Paul, how many points do you think Wealdstone need for survival? If Dagenham don't change manager, they're going down for me. Yeah, we'll come on to Dagenham shortly. But of course, as for Wealdstone, points for survival. So we leave that question until we get onto the table, or would you like to answer it now?
Yeah. It give me a time to sort of work it out as well. I think go through what I predicted. But yeah, I mean, it, like you said, Luke, it changes. You sort of alluded to it. It changes every week in terms of what you think. I think if you can get to that magic 40 point, before was always, but I think it's got to be higher than that this year. So yeah, we'll have a look at that when we get down to the Tamworth Stones prediction.
We certainly will. And Mickey's with us tonight. He's becoming, well, he's a regular now, to be fair. Our mate from up north. He said, evening, lads. He got some tough fixtures coming up, but I think another 3 wins, and I think that he can hopefully hold on to the playoff place. Mickey, I don't know if you were here for our what we're discussing earlier. We're also suggesting that you could actually go for top 3 perhaps this season. I know you had a little slip up perhaps on Saturday, but is it doable now for you, or would you just be happy with a playoff spot this season? And then All Things City said, Altrincham of all teams, serious bogey fan. I'm a York and Halifax fan Tuesday night. Oh, I'll get you now. I thought, because of course we want York to win as a Halifax fan because Altrincham are around us. Yeah, York will separate all our differences, leave those aside. Do us a favour tomorrow night and all forgiven. But now also we've had Declan who's come in tonight and he said, I could be given the Southern teams an advantage in final as able to take a hell of a lot more fans compared to Northern clubs would make a lot more sense in a middle of England venue. To be fair, the only thing I will say to that, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to my argument here, is why they should do that then in League 2, League 1, the Championship perhaps, because, you know, Southern sides and Northern sides is always going to be an advantage, isn't they, for them. I know as you get higher, you'd like to think both sides can fill it up, but it's not usually the case, to be honest, until you get into, you know, your bigger clubs in the Championship. In the playoff final. But yeah, I understand your reason 100%. But then if you had it at Old Trafford, it'd be a completely different story. Everyone would be saying, well, it's not fair for the Southern fans. So I think if you're doing it based on fairness geographically, it'd have to be like Birmingham, wouldn't it, overall? But I think in every opinion in football, not everyone's going to be happy, are they? So that's the only thing I will say on that. And then Mickey said, let's not get carried away yet, Luke. Let's get some of our players back first and go from there. 100%. Anyway, we can probably get onto the predictions now. We're going to go in a little bit more detail into both sides tonight. Of course, the title of the podcast is the Game Week Preview Show. So we want to go through every fixtures, but we also want to discuss the teams, and I feel if we're doing it whilst we're predicting the games, it probably makes more sense, and it's a bit more organised, and I suppose, and we don't go off track and go on for nearly 2 hours. But no, these are the scores on the doors for those that have just joined us. Paul has finally taken the lead, 144 points to 142. I picked up just a 1 point on Saturday. Paul, 3 points for you. It doesn't really matter how many points by, to be honest. You still managed to win the game week and take the lead.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row. I'm on a bit of form, so long may that continue. So, as I say, the 12 games this week, there's some there's some humdingers in there, isn't there? So we'll have to see. That there's going to be teams in there that won't want to lose, and they're fighting for their lives at both ends of the table. So could be a really unpredictable week to have to predict.
It certainly could be. And of course, would you like to give the Predictions League sponsor a plug as well?
Oh, yeah. My very own Not Just Travel, PTF Travel. So, yeah, anyone who's got any holiday needs, please give us a shout. We're coming into spring now. Everyone's going to be in a better mood. I think it must be sort of coming up to payday sort of in the next week or so, if not if this Friday. So, yeah, if anyone's thinking about any holidays anything they want to do travel-wise, then please just give me a shout. Be more than happy to help you.
Brilliant. Right, let's get on with the predictions as well as I'm here. Also, just to state, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, then please do. Grow the community a little bit more. So remember to like, as well as it gets it out to more people. And also check out our sponsors, Cards Accepted. There's a link in the description for you to do that. Of course, they sponsor the podcast as a whole as well. Anyway, let's have a quick look at the table before we get onto the predictions. Of course, there was a question we need to go back to about Wealdstone at the moment. Of course, we spoke about the top 7. We'll come back to them shortly. But looking towards the bottom 4, 8 and 9 clubs, you could say, that were involved in the relegation battle. Wealdstone at the moment, 35 points, 32 games gone, 14 games remaining for you guys, 3 wins on the bounce currently, so you're on decent form. How many points do you reckon you're going to need to survive this season?
I mean, you look at it, Luke, you'd probably be looking at maybe upwards of nearly 50 points, I would suggest. I mean, the good thing with Wealdstone, and it's what's difficult at the moment, though, is because there's that disparity between how many games have been played until that evens out a little bit. Because, you know, for the sake of Wealdstone, 2 games in hand is great, but you've got to have points on the board. So I would suggest, and also you've got to also then consider, you know, Dagenham and Redbridge. You look at their form, absolutely horrific. You know, they're in free fall. Aldershot are going to be distracted by the FA Trophy. You Woking potentially. So there's so many variables, but I think you've got to be aiming to sort of that 50-point mark to make sure that you're more than safe.
So it was 50 points at the moment. Let's look at sides that are looking to be completely safe at the moment. You'd probably say anywhere from Hartlepool should be, well, you'd have to probably consider Tamworth as well. Where would the cut-off point for you where you think sides will be safe?
Yeah, I mean, it's in and around that middle table. Yeah, the thing is, you look at Solihull at the moment; they're perfectly okay. They're 42 points off 34 games. But look at their run of form: 5 losses on the bounce. You know, they're at home against a tough Sutton side this week. Who's, you know, you look at Dagenham. You know, they haven't won in 5 either. So I think it's easy, or it'd be easy to say, oh, if you're in and around that 14, 15, 16 spot, you're probably safe. But you know, Solihull played get more games than some in that bottom half, as an example. As have Braintree. So any of them could get sucked into it, Luke. I think the obvious ones are Dagenham and Aldershot. You know, Wealdstone are clearly still in there. Maidenhead haven't sort of kicked on after a good few results a few weeks ago. Fylde are improving. It's an interesting one because I think apart from maybe Boston and Ebbsfleet, you know, there's still potentially 2 places up for grabs between 6, 7, 8 teams.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we'll get on to the predictions now. Starting things off with the first game, which is, of course, AFC Fylde versus Hartlepool. Firstly, speaking about Fylde, then, 1 defeat in 5 now for Fylde. If you actually look at those victories that they've got, they've gone to Altrincham away from home, won there against an Altrincham side that at the time won decent form. Halifax, gone away to Halifax, won there. Prior to those games, they'd only won 1 away match all season. So to go to both of those and win and take maximum points from those is very impressive for a side in their position. And then, of course, getting a very, very respectable point away at Gateshead as well. And that 1 defeat actually being against Boston, which came as a little bit of a surprise. But yeah, Fylde certainly picking up at the moment, yet still find themselves in the bottom 4.
Yeah, and that's purely on the basis of what came prior to that, with, you know, Kevin Phillips in charge. Not suggesting this is his fault by any stretch of the imagination, but the new coaching team have gone in there and they've done a little bit of magic. And I think what's Fylde have got to be hopeful for, Luke, is a lot of those results have come away from home, like you said. So if they can pick up a bit of home form, you know, teams down the bottom, you've got to use your home form to your advantage if you can. Pick as many points up from home, and anything you pick up away from home becomes almost a bit of a bonus. Fylde seems to be doing it the other way around, so they need to, you know, almost start tomorrow night. Could be seen as right. Let's look at our home fixtures and to start trying to pick up some points there. Hartlepool, since they brought Anthony Limbrick in, and Lenny Lawrence sort of moved aside or went upstairs again. They seem to have dropped off, and they've been hugely inconsistent this year. And we've always said about Hartlepool respecting the league. Last time they were here, they respected the league. And they have done that again. They haven't sort of come in big time and sort of claim they're going to win this, that, and the other. But yeah, they've really sort of struggled to adapt back to National League football for one reason or another. And it's a tough gig for Hartlepool. You know, under the lights of Fylde, they're on a bit of form. They look at the other fixtures, and there's potentially teams below them and above them are going to drop points. So they're going to have their bit between the teeth. So a good old-fashioned sort of Northern National League affair coming up in that game, I believe.
For me, Hartlepool this season, I've been really disappointed with. If I had to pick a side that have probably been the most underwhelming for me personally, I would actually go with Hartlepool. Of course, there'll be arguments about Solihull recently, but until probably halfway through the season, Solihull were looking like a side that could finish inside the playoffs this season. Hartlepool throughout the season had a horrendous start, just slightly above the drop zone, I believe, then climbed all the way up and looked like a side that were in the second half of the season really going to start to push on, but they just haven't. And for me, to have a quarter of the season left to play and to have nothing to play for, which I don't think Hartlepool do at the moment. I think they should be fine from relegation, but they won't be finishing inside the playoffs this season. For me, that is very disappointing considering Hartlepool's squad at the moment. Of course, if you look at Hartlepool, the owner will get a lot of criticism. I think in the summer, they invested it felt like with the players they brought in, they brought a high calibre of players in, fully backed Daryl Sal. That clearly hasn't worked out. But I just list some of the names that they have here at Hartlepool: Nicky Featherstone, Adam Campbell coming from Crawley, Gary Medine, a player everyone's well aware of it in the EFL and has been very successful as high as championship level. The likes of Luke Waterfall got promotion out of this division with Grimsby, could easily do a job in the EFL. Mancini, Manny Di Savoué. That's just a few players to mention, and there's many, many more as well for Hartlepool. Yet they sit themselves bang in mid-table in 12th position at the moment. I'm so disappointed with them. It didn't work out with Daryl Sal. And I think the only issue I've got in terms of the owner, and I know there's a bit of a wider issue there with the owner, not just in terms of this season. I know it's been going on for a couple of seasons now, but the main issue I've got with probably the owner is the fact that Daryl Sal was sacked. They then appointed Lenny Lawrence, of course, was already with the club, did a good job there. Everyone was saying it was a cheap option. It may have been, but it was the most effective option. And then they've gone down the road of appointing Limbrick, who doesn't suit the style of Hartlepool in terms of players that they've got. The players that he's inherited are not players that would suit his style at all. He's come from a TNS side that play in the Welsh division. That is a massive jump. I know he's previously managed in the National League, but for me overall, it's just such a poor appointment with that squad. For me, I look at the amount of individuals in this squad in Hartlepool and the calibre of players, a lot of experience in that squad. And I think it needs a coach for themselves to have a lot of experience, not a 41-year-old that lacks experience in the National League at coaching level. So for me, I've been so disappointed with Hartlepool from top to bottom this season with that squad. I think it's a team of individuals. It needs a proper coach to go in there and get the best out of this team. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yes. I mean, I think you succinctly sort of stated why Hartlepool are where they are. And it'd be interesting if there is any Hartlepool fans listening and watching us to disagree or sort of give a different opinion as to why they've ended up in the mid-table. Like you said, when you rattle off the names and the investment they've made, the manager they got in, who is a National League caliber manager in Daryl Sal, Lenny Lawrence. I think Anthony Limbrick, is he a longer term decision, or is it a case of they'll reassess it at the end of the season? A lot of these players now, when they've got nothing to play for, what they have got to play for is their future, I guess. Are they playing for their next contract? Are they playing to be at the club they're already at, or are they playing to try and get a contract higher up from a club that may give them better opportunities, or to win leagues, or to play in the EFL? So, I think it's a little bit churlish to sort of say, I think that they're on the beach and the season's done. Personal and professional pride should mean these players put a shift in and try their best to do what they can for the football club they're employed for. But you're right, it's going to be harder, Luke, when you think you're not going to go up, you're not going to go down, you haven't got any cups to play for, final appearances. So yeah, it could be a long sort of however many games they've got, 12, 13, 14 games left for Hartlepool, but they're just going to have to try and push on. And the thing is, with any of these teams, if you get on a run of form, you never know where it may end up taking you. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute Hartlepool will end up in the playoffs or end up in the relegation zone, but you just never know. So you've got to put in that shift every week and look after yourself and see where it might take you.
They've had one win in 10 games. For me, I don't feel that the players are actually playing for that shirt. It's a bunch of players that are individuals. They're not. I don't think they actually have the best interests of the clubs. A lot of aging players, a lot of quality players, but aging players. The likes of Ronnie Desabu, where I think he's the other 30 now, 31, I think he'll be now. Luke Waterfall, it's a lot of experience in that side, but it doesn't feel like they particularly care. And this season for Hartlepool, it's been horrendous. They're not playing for the shirt. That squad for me, at the start of the season, I had them, I think, 5th. They should at least be finishing inside the playoffs this season. That should be the aim, at least in terms of that squad, in my opinion. I don't think there's many squads at the start of the season on paper that were actually better. They've got the same amount of points as Tamworth. Tamworth were the outright favourites to finish bottom of the league this season. Everyone had written them off. They're part-time themselves, yet they've got the same amount of points of them. They've only managed to score 41 goals all season, which may not seem too disappointing. But if you consider the forward line that Hartlepool actually have there, it's disappointing for me, considering they also concede a fair amount of goals. I just think it's been a disaster for them, and I don't think it really gets spoken about enough, is Hartlepool. But if you look at that squad on paper and you go through each player, for me overall, they've really disappointed me this season. In terms of predictions, then we'll have a look at the live chat, see what their predictions are, and then we will come on to ours. These are the predictions then. At the moment, we've had 2-1 to Fylde, 2-1 to Hartlepool, 1-0 we've had. We've had 3-1 to Fylde, 2-1 Hartlepool. It's quite a split one, this. A lot of people have got different predictions for this game. I think I've still got a few more predictions coming in. Hartlepool looked okay against York, and then 2-0 Fylde. Moving on to, our predictions, of course. Paul, just run us through your predictions. Why you've gone for that? I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's one way of not losing, Luke. He's not asking what the prediction is.
Yeah, no.
I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I think it will be an attritional game. Fylde will go in with a lot of confidence, and I've gone with the 2-2 draw.
I've gone for a 3-1 Fylde win. Like I said, Fylde on better form at the moment, 1 defeat in 5. The only issue that kind of goes against my prediction is the fact that when Fylde seem to get 1 or 2, even just a win, they don't seem to really back it up and go on a run of momentum. Like at the moment, it's very positive at Fylde. It can quickly just change like that. Although they have really done well in the previous 3 fixtures to get the results they have done. I think them being back at home now, this is a massive opportunity for them to get out the drop zone, which they would likely do if they can win this game. I'm going to go for a 3-1 Fylde win. I don't really need to speak too more about Hartlepool, but it just doesn't feel like the squad particularly care anymore. I'm going for a 3-1 Fylde win. Moving on to the next game then. Aldershot versus Dagenham. A huge match this for both sides. Of course, both sides, I think overall have probably underperformed this season in terms of the fan bases. I think they'll both be expecting to be in better positions now. Dagenham, it does feel like they're sleepwalking towards relegation. A significant loss on Saturday against Boston. I thought that was the opportunity for them to get back to winning ways. I really did, after being on a horrendous run before that. Yet they actually were defeated by a Boston side that currently sit in 23rd in the division. It's hard to look at Dagenham now and actually see where this next win's actually going to come from. For me, the only thing they can do now is change that manager.
Yeah, I feel so sorry for him, Luke. I mean, you could go right back to it's probably this time last year and the back end of last season, and Ben Strevens, they lost some players. They had to, they sort of their season petered out, and we spoke about it earlier in the season that they've got Ben Strevens in, and will they invest? And they started the opening day of the season against Wealdstone. They won 2-1, and Dion Pereira, pulled the strings. And you look at it and think, actually, this team could do a little bit, and it just hasn't worked out. And Ben Strevens, I remember when they came to the Vale and I was commentating of the game, and I spoke to the Dagenham analyst, and I sort of suggested to him that they'd just been hugely inconsistent, and yes, they had injuries and everything else, but he didn't disagree with me at the time, and that has continued, if not got worse. And obviously Ben Strevens went. There's clearly something going on with potentially the amount of money they wanted to invest, or they haven't got, because they've lost 2 or 3 key players, including their captain Elliot Justin, their goalkeeper, their stalwart, one of the fans' favourites. He ends up going to play for Malden and Tiptree, 2 leagues below. Probably, I would suggest on a similar amount of money, but Dagenham have had to let him go, and then they put Lewis Young in, who's unproven at this level, to give a kid essentially that gig in the position they were in with the backdrop of what they had. Fair play to him, he took it on. I hope it doesn't sort of cause him any problems in the future if this wasn't to become successful. But it's really, really hard. And I know Dagenham fans on social media this week, Luke, and I don't know if you saw it, were suggesting that they do need a change and they need an experienced head in there. But even if you get an experienced head in there, was it 12 to 14 games to play? Again, that's a really, really tough assignment, because they're a set of players that are evidently short on confidence, evidently short on probably quality in the squad. I don't know whether it's balanced in terms of what they have. But you're right. I think, where is that next win coming from? Because they're coming up against an Aldershot side that have got into the semi-final of the FA Trophy, that have won a couple of games recently. They're fighting for their lives themselves, and this is one of those games. When we looked at this this game week, out of the 12 games, is one of those 6-pointers, and I can only see one winner, and I've gone with Aldershot to win 3-1.
We'll come to the live chat as well for their predictions as well shortly. But just finally on Dagenham, just responding to your point on the manager. I'm not saying I don't have sympathy for him at all. I think he's been thrown at the deep end. It wasn't actually a positive time for him to come in, particularly when you're so young as well. There's such high expectations as well. I just look back at that Ben Strevens, obviously letting him go, and obviously it's all in hindsight, but still, they have an egg on their faces now. Do Dagenham at the moment? In that first half of the season, if you actually look at Dagenham, they picked up 28 points in 22 games under Ben Strevens, which is a fairly average amount, you'd say, probably about where you'd have expected Dagenham to be, perhaps. I know they weren't on the best of form when they actually let him go. Since the new manager's come in, they've actually had one win in 12 games, and they're winless in 10 of those games as well. Well, they haven't won in 10 games, I should say. For me, I'm not saying I don't have sympathy for him, but I think they're running out of options here, and the only way of them surviving now is by making a significant change. And I think bringing in a new manager who's got a bit of experience would certainly put them in a better opportunity of actually being able to survive, because at the end of this week, Dagenham will be in the drop zone, I believe, because Wealdstone, Fylde, Maidenhead, even Boston to a certain extent are all improving and all looking to get out of the drop zone. And the 4 sides have got to go down at the end of the day. And if you're looking at sides that are off form at the moment, Dagenham, alongside Ebbsfleet, are the most out of form side in the division. So, I'm really concerned for Dagenham. As for Aldershot, really positive couple of weeks for them after a slight bit of nerves, you could say, perhaps, that the manager getting a lot of stick and as they dropped into the drop zone, but they've pulled it out of the bag, of course, defeating Solihull and also defeating Hartlepool as well at home, scoring a good number of goals as well at home, as well, of course, getting to the semi-final of the FA Trophy. And just quickly speaking on that, of course, Woking the draw, that's going to be some semi-final, that Aldershot versus Woking. If I lived down south, I'd certainly be at that game if I could be. As for this one, though, I think there's a lot of momentum at Aldershot now. It feels like they're slowly but surely climbing towards securing a spot in the National League next season. So I'm going to back them to win this game 3-1. Let's have a look at your predictions finally before we move on to the game. We've had 2-1 to Dagenham. We've had 3-1 to Aldershot, 3-0, 1-1. We've had 2-1. 3-1 to Aldershot. Yeah, of course. I think as you'd expect, everyone is swaying towards an Aldershot victory. And then we've also had 2-0 to the Shots. And then everyone's decided to move on to random games now, Colin. We'll come on to those games shortly. I won't put your predictions out yet. We'll move on to the next game then. Barnet versus Yeovil. Barnet, we spoke about them already, but they are in terrific form at the moment. Defeating York, then actually winning in style against Oldham and Rochdale. They actually scored 7 goals in total against those two sides. Of course, 3 against Oldham and 4 against Rochdale. Against sides that are both looking to finish inside the playoffs this season. That's very, very impressive from them, isn't it?
Oh, massively impressive. I don't think there's much more we can say about Barnet at this stage. I think we both felt that at some point they may slip up and, want for a better phrase, bottle it. And I've been openly said that and got a bit of stick for it. But, they're not doing it this year. They've done well in the January transfer window. They've freshened their squad up. They've taken the ball by the horns. And, they're playing Yeovil at home on tomorrow night. And Yeovil defensively are quite frugal. But, I can't see anything other than a very, very comfortable Barnet win. To beat York and then to win 3-0 and 4-0, in the next 2 games, you've got to be going into that full of confidence, absolutely full of confidence. And Yeovil are a little bit shot shy. They're not brilliant in front of goal. They don't score many. I've spoken to Mark Cooper on several occasions this season, and we had a chat with him, didn't we, early in the season? I think that was the biggest challenge. But they're not going up. They're not going down. They're going to consolidate. I just think Barnet have got so much more to play for. I know Mark Cooper will put a team out to compete without a doubt, but I can only see a very comfortable 3-0 Barnet win.
There's very few clubs that haven't particularly got too much to play for this season, but I think it is a successful season for Yeovil. But Yeovil are first season back in the National League to be sat in 11th place, more or less safe for next season. I think Cooper has to pat himself and the team on the back, to be honest, to survive this season comfortably as well. Of course, there'll be a section of the fan base that are a little disappointed that they haven't really pushed on like they were looking like they were going to do in the first half of the season and finish inside the playoffs. But, it's a long season. And for your first season back in the National League to be higher mid-table for me in the top half currently, it's a very successful season so far for me, for Yeovil. Of course, coming up against Barnet, Barnet are just on a different planet at this moment in time compared to the rest of the division. For me, I think I can't see anything but a Barnet win. Yeovil's record against top 7 sides is very disappointing. They haven't actually defeated anyone inside the top 7 so far this season. And for me, I look at Barnet and I just think they're just going to have too much for Yeovil. I think Yeovil will look to defend. Very good defensively, Yeovil, but for me, I think if there's any side that can break down Yeovil, it is Barnet. And I think they're going to go on to win this game 2-0. So, Barnet 2-0. Moving on to the next one then. Boston, are they down yet? Or can they still live in hope of safety this season? Of course, they come up against an Oldham side that are winless in 5 and are struggling to score as well.
The big thing for Boston, Luke, is the games in hand. You get 3 points behind Maidenhead. 3 games behind Maidenhead, 2 behind Fylde. All of a sudden that becomes sort of they're into the 30-odd point mark. I think they're relying on other results as well. They can't. It's not in their own hands. That's the challenge for them. Maidenhead, Fylde, Wealdstone, Dagenham. It's essentially in their own hands. Where I think Boston are going to have to be reliant on other results and. They can only do what they can do. Like you said, Luke, they are improving. 2 wins in the last 3, only 2 losses in the last 5. Their game in hand, one of them is against Wealdstone as an example. So they're going to look at those little chinks of sort of light and think, right, we've got to grasp this. And, honestly, I think tomorrow night is one of those. They're playing a really out of sorts Oldham at home under the lights. They're going to give it a good go. So are they out of it? I think they're probably going to go down because they're relying on others rather than it's in their own hands. But they're going to give it a good shift to try and stay in this league.
They've took too long to adjust to the National League for me, Boston. They're playing catch-up now. At first half of the season, they didn't really remain competitive. And, of course, they've improved recently, but it just feels a little bit too late for me for Boston to survive now. On this game specifically, though, speaking of Oldham, they're a side that have really dropped off since Christmas. You could do a whole video identifying Oldham and why they've dropped off so much in terms of the results, of course. Still sat in 5th place at the moment, but they've lost that spine of the team. They've been a bit unlucky with injuries. What's concerned me is, yes, there'll be a section of the fan base that look at Oldham and say, well, they've just been unlucky with injuries. We can feel sorry for ourselves as well because, of course, Josh Stone's left and Clucas has left. But they haven't got the same depth of a side like Barnet or a side like York. Barnet could let Nicky Kabamba go like that. The top goal scorer for the past couple of years, was doing okay in the first half of the season, probably not to the standards of what he's set in the previous years, but they could let him go for a fee like they did. And they've been able to cope without him probably better than when he was actually in the side. As for Oldham, Josh Stones leave. They're not the same team. Sam Clucas leaves. They're not the same team. Manny Mumph out injured. There's been a significant fall off, and it's because they haven't got players to replace that spine of the team. Whereas a side like Barnet don't just have a strong 11 at the start of the season. They have 2 strong 11s, and that's the difference for me. I'm not saying all of them don't have depth, but they don't have depth in quality for me, and that's the issue with them. And they're currently out of form, and they're another side really struggling at the moment and need to get back to winning ways. As for Boston, they will see this as an opportunity, and they're desperate for points. And I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for me. So, 1-1 draw for this game. What's your prediction? And would you like to talk through that a little bit?
I've flipped on his head. I mean, you're looking at the form here on the table, Luke, as you were talking, and Oldham got 3 points out of 15, and everyone in that top 9 have got probably at least 8 points. It's a ridiculous drop off right at the wrong time of the season. Saying that, I think Oldham at some point have got to turn it on and turn it round. I think they'll probably win tomorrow night, and I put a 2-1 Oldham win, but I don't think it will probably be pretty. It will probably be quite difficult. But they've got to turn their fortunes around. I think tomorrow night will be one of those opportunities, and they'll take it.
I expect Oldham to finish inside the playoffs still this season, but I don't think it's going to be a pretty end to the season for them. I think it is games like this where they need to be just finding ways to win and then hopefully get in with a chance of getting promoted through the playoffs, because, it's a cliche, but anything can happen inside the playoffs. You just got to be within the top 7. And I think that's the aim for me now. Top 3 is certainly gone for Oldham, particularly with their current form. And I think for them, they just need to consolidate and try hold on to a playoff spot this season and hopefully get a home tie for that first fixture. Moving on to the next game now, Eastleigh versus Ebbsfleet. Eastleigh, it's like 2 steps forwards and 1 step back for them. Building up momentum, looking like they could maybe sneak into the playoffs and put a bit of a late run together to finish inside the playoff spots this season, yet go and get defeated by a side currently in the bottom 6 in the National League in Braintree. This is a favourable fixture for them, though. It does feel like Ebbsfleet throughout the season are just handing out points to the opposition. And I think Eastleigh should be able to get through this game. I'm going for a 2-1 Ebbsfleet win. Just in terms of Eastleigh this season, they're another side. Paul McCallum not really lived up to the expectations as what people probably expected. For me, I look at Eastleigh and it just does feel like they rely on Tyrell Shade too heavily for me. And when he doesn't turn up, it feels like Eastleigh don't turn up.
Yeah, again, looking at this, Luke, the likes of Eastleigh and we talk about Southend being just outside that playoffs, they're going to be really kicking themselves, because if you look at the last 2 fixtures, apart from Barnet and York, the teams from 3rd to 9th between them have won 1 game, and that was Altrincham when they played couple of games ago when they actually beat Hartlepool 2-1. So, when you say 2 steps forward, 1 step back with Eastleigh and Southend to a point, they got themselves to 48 points, and they go and drop 5 points out of the next 6. And that's really frustrating because, Altrincham have dropped 3 points. Halifax have dropped 4 points. They could have really sort of made ground on that, but they still find themselves 4 points behind with 2 extra games played against Altrincham and 1 against Halifax. So, they're going to be kicking themselves because you're right. They really sort of got themselves into a little bit of form. They quietly come on the outside. No one was really talking about them. Got a squad that not full of names apart from 1 or 2. And as we talked about, their manager not being, a well-known manager at this level. He's fairly new in Kelvin Davis. They're just going to be kicking themselves. But I think they'll be thinking, we're playing Ebbsfleet. It's a great opportunity. Ebbsfleet have vastly improved on what they were, but they're still way off the mark. And I've gone with a 3-0 Eastleigh win.
Right, okay then. Well, I've gone for a 2-1 Ebbsfleet win. We'll move on to the next fixture now. And of course, it's my team, Halifax, coming up against Forest Green. The battle of the defences, you could say. 2 sides that are very good defensively this season. I think a lot of the predictions will be low scoring for this game, but you never know, with these 2 sides. Halifax, in specific games, maybe not across the division, across the season, but have been known to be able to score a few. Perhaps you look at Aldershot, York. I think we stunned them quite early on. It's an interesting one for me, this game. Maybe I'm being a little bit biased and optimistic, but with us being the home side against the Forest Green side, for me, that are kind of falling off slightly. I think this is a winnable game, and I think we're going to win 1-0. I think it'll be a really scrappy and awful game to watch, and I think it will be 1-0 either way, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 Halifax win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 1-1, and I think Halifax, on reflection, Luke, are going to start looking and kicking themselves. Their goal difference is +8, apart from Eastleigh and Southend just outside. That's the lowest by an absolute country mile in that top 7. And, if they could have converted more chances, created more chances, would they be on way more than 53 points? It's hard to say. And there's all this buts and maybes. But, two miserly looking defences. Forest Green have scored a lot of goals, 53, but I don't think that's come very recently, has it? So, listen, this is a result. This is a fixture that teams will be looking at, Boston, Oldham playing Boston. Oldham are thinking, if we get 3 points there, someone's going to drop points at Halifax, Forest Green, third playing 6th. So I don't think any team are going to want to lose. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. Like you said, low scoring. I don't think it'll be a particularly entertaining game. So if you go into that one, Luke, good luck. But I reckon it'll be a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a bit of a boring one. But to be fair, I don't know, maybe because we're playing against a better opposition, you never know. But I'm quite, I just hope we can get the 3 points and just get out of there, because it would be a big win if we can do that. Of course, we've just played against Rochdale and York and got 2 points out of them. If I'm being honest, we could have got maximum points out of those 2 games. Against Rochdale, we had a penalty. We missed that penalty. If we'd have scored that, we'd have probably gone on to win because it was quite late on. And then against York, to be 2-0 up and then to actually end up dropping points. Still a good point, but, when you're 2-0 up, you'd like to think you can go on to win the game, no matter who you're against. Perhaps we need to get back to winning ways. But after this, of course, we've got Yeovil on Saturday. So I see those 2 as 2 tough games, to be honest, against 2 good defensively strong sides. Moving on to the next one, Maidenhead versus Braintree. We're speaking about games where neither side wants to lose. I think this is certainly one at the moment. Maidenhead going through patches at the moment, getting on a good run of form, then losing a couple. That seems to be the case at the moment. As for Braintree, looking to try escape this relegation battle because their form has certainly improved recently. For this one, I can't see many goals at all. I'm going for a 0-0. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 1-1 actually. Again, I don't think it'd be massively entertaining. Got a feel of the National League South about that rather than the National League, isn't it? I don't think there'll be a massive crowd there. An old-fashioned stadium in Maidenhead, which hopefully they'll use their advantage. But listen, Maidenhead have got there's a real carrot in front of them here, because if they win, they go 2 points. They go within 2 points of Braintree. again, you've got to look at other results. But that it's just those momentum, those sort of bits that you can grip onto to think, right, we're going to stay in this league, because Fylde have got a tough one at Pools. If they get something and Fylde don't, all of a sudden they're fourth from bottom. Wealdstone do get something out of Tamworth, they're fifth from bottom. So it's in their own hands. Like I said, it isn't for Boston. It is for Maidenhead, along with some of the others we still got to talk about. So that'll be something that they really got to grip onto and think, right, let's run with this. And it's a winnable game for either team, this, because they're slightly unpredictable in that bottom half. But I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
Moving on to the next one, Rochdale versus Gateshead. Rochdale on horrendous form themselves at the moment. Of course, a side that's trying to play catch up with the amount of games in hand that they've got. One positive for them, they also got through to the semi-finals of the FA Trophy after defeating Altrincham on Saturday. The only question is that going to be a distraction for them? What they're going to focus more on at the moment? But yeah, it does feel like they're blowing it a little bit. It was well in their hands to climb back into the playoffs. I think they had 4 games in hand on the likes of Halifax and Altrincham, and they've just not managed to win those games. I know there's been a fair amount of tough fixtures in there. Southend away, Barnet being one of them as well, and I think Oldham as well, which are a few tough games there. But you have to say, looking at the likes of the Ebbsfleet game and not defeating them, and I think Tamworth as well, they failed to defeat. You have to look at those games and say, they're games where we should have been winning if we're wanting to finish inside the playoffs this season. So Gateshead dropping points on Saturday, 2 draws in the previous games. I think if Gateshead came in and got a point, they'd be happy with that. And I think it'll be one of the more entertaining games, which may be a better option than the previous 2 games that we've discussed, if you're wanting to watch a match. But yeah, I'm going for a 2-2 draw for this one. I think both sides are capable of scoring goals, and both sides seem to play quite nice football as well. So yeah, I think it'll certainly be a good game, this. But yeah, I'm going 2-2.
I've gone with Gateshead to win 3-1. You could put a spin on Rochdale. They've lost 1 in 5, just got through to the FA Trophy semi-final where they play Spennymoor, got a great chance to get to Wembley. FA Trophy aside, their last 5 fixtures, they've scored 1 goal, no goals, 1 goal, no goals. They're struggling to score goals. Aside from Saturday, I don't know what sort of side that they played against. I can't remember who they played now. But Altrincham, I don't know what sort of side Altrincham put out. But, they did score more than 1 on Saturday, which will give them a bit of belief and a bit of hope. And they've just brought Jay Bird in from Exeter City, who's been on loan at Wealdstone when he was at MK Dons a couple of seasons ago. Probably one of the worst loan signings I think I've ever seen play for Wealdstone since they've been in the National League. But he scored on Saturday. So, they got a bit of firepower up front if he can score them a few goals. But listen, I think that's their Achilles heel. They're not scoring goals. They're not converting draws into wins. They look very good. They've only let 28 goals in. They're very good defensively. They've really now got to turn it on, Luke, and they've only played 30 games. They've got 4 games in hand over some of these teams. But they have now got a Wembley in their sights. They've got a semi-final to have to play, so that's going to be another rearranged fixture. They are going to be full tilt between now and the end of April, beginning of May, and that may affect them. So we'll have to see how they get on. But I don't think they'll win tomorrow night. I think Gateshead will go to Rochdale and they'll win 3-1.
Fair enough. Then moving on to the next fixture, Solihull Moors. We've talked them to death. It's the same old story. Just look at that all red, and it's even worse. We could go further back. We don't need to give our opinions on Matt Taylor. Watch previous podcasts. We can talk about that. They've got to get back to winning ways at some point. Sutton not in the best of form themselves. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. It's really hard to really say why. Don't know. I just think Sutton probably playoffs is out of their reach at the moment. Both sides in a similar position. Solihull, I think, as I mentioned, Dagenham and Ebbsfleet being the most out of form sides at the moment. I think Solihull as well. I think they're actually on worse form than Dagenham.
They are worse,
which says a lot. But yeah, I'd like to think they can get something out of this game, being at home as well. I'm going for a 1-1 draw, but I'm not too confident, to be honest, for that. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-0 Sutton win. I think it's purely based on what Solihull are currently doing. You know, they can't buy a win. They're not scoring a bundle of goals. They have tried to address their issues in defence. They've just signed Cundy on loan from Robbie Cundy on loan from Notts County. They signed a right back, didn't they, last week?
Yeah.
So you know, what is Taylor? The challenge I've got with Matt Taylor is I'm not sure he knows the league that well, and I think he openly admitted that when he left Wealdstone to go to Solihull. And the problem you've also got, Luke, is he doesn't have a lot of faith. The fans, don't have a lot of faith in him, and you know, having five losses plus since he's been there. I can only see one winner tomorrow night, and that's Sutton United, and they're going to win 2-0.
I can't get it up here, but I'm just thinking, do you think I don't think Solihull will even have Ebbsfleet to play until the end of the season. I think they've played them twice now. Just trying to think of the remaining fixtures. Do you actually think, could you actually see Solihull not winning another game until the end of the season now?
Listen, it'd be daft to say they're not going to win another game, because you just it's tough though, right? I mean, you could turn around and say you can't see it purely based on the form of the last 10 games and the fact they changed their manager. It's a really, really difficult one, because at some point they'll play well. I mean, they may be playing well and be really unlucky, but to lose that many games in a row, you can't be playing brilliantly well. I mean, they drew against Wealdstone on the 1st of February. You know, they haven't won a game. They've drawn one game this calendar year. Looking at this, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 matches, they've got 1 point. So it's not inconceivable. But prior to that, they were unbeaten in 5, and they'd won 4 of those 5. Mm-hmm. So you know, it's really difficult to sort of suggest that they won't win another game for the rest of the season. But currently, that may well happen.
Yeah, they have actually got Ebbsfleet at home. But to be honest, the way they're going, you never know with that game. But yeah, they haven't got the kindest of runs to the end of the season either. Altrincham, Forest Green, Rochdale, Southend, York still to play as well. So relegation could be on the cards for Solihull, and that does sound stupid. But you know, they're going to need about 8 points, and you know, the way they're going at the moment, it is hard to see where they could potentially win. I know they have got Boston and Ebbsfleet perhaps, but
they got Dagenham last game of the season at home. That could be
a huge match. Yeah, it could be. But yeah, moving on to the next game now. Southend versus Woking. Better times ahead for both clubs. Of course, both clubs, ownership-wise, have got that sorted over the past year or so. Woking, under the new ownership, it would be the perfect start for them if they could get to Wembley this season in the FA Trophy. Since the ownership's come in, they've invested in the squad, brought Neil Ardley in, and it's been perfect for them. They managed to climb away from the drop zone. A lot of discussions about them actually dropping down this season. Of course, that ownership's gone through now. They've been able to invest, like I've mentioned. It's unlikely they're going to go down. They've had 1 defeat since Neil Ardley's come in, and of course that was against York. They've got an FA Trophy semi-final against Aldershot coming up, an opportunity for them to get to Wembley for the first time since 1994. Positive times ahead. As for Southend, on very good form themselves at the moment, still within a shout of finishing inside the playoffs this season. Both sides seem very similar to me in terms of the way they play. Very defensively strong, really hard to break down. 2 horrid sides to play against for the so-called better sides, I would say, with the way they set up. Very good at grinding out results. I'm going to go for a draw for this game, and I actually think you're going to agree with me if I had to guess. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. What have you said?
I have gone for a very low score. I've gone for a Southend 1-0 win.
Oh, you've gone for something different.
It's not. They're on the slightly better run of form. They're at home. Woking are going to be buoyed by the fact they got through on penalties against Oxford City on Saturday. I didn't see the team put out by Woking, but you'd like to think he probably rested 1 or 2, so they're going to be a bit fresher for tomorrow night. I can't see this being a high-scoring game, but I think Southend having that home advantage, having maybe that little bit of a carrot of potentially getting in the playoffs, when you look at what the other teams have got to do. So I've gone with a Southend 1-0 win.
Fair enough. It's funny looking at the playoffs at the moment and seeing which sides could actually finish inside because, Halifax and Altrincham, it feels like they're well on their way to securing playoff spots. Of course, it is in Rochdale's hands technically, but it feels like they're blowing it at the moment. They're actually 6 points off the playoffs, 2 games in hand, and Altrincham did have to win both of those to go level. And they've actually got 3 games in hand on Halifax, yet Halifax are actually 7 points above them. So I think that it's going to be a bit of a struggle for them to overtake those 2 clubs with their games in hand this season. As for Eastleigh, people would have put a case together, but it's results like that Braintree game, which gives me the impression that they've just not got what it takes and the consistency to finish inside the playoffs this season. And then you've got Southend, who, another side on half decent form at the moment, but seem to draw a lot of silly games, if that makes sense. Could you really see anyone overtaking the top 7 at the moment?
No, no, genuinely not. Only because Altrincham have got 2 games in hand. Halifax have got a game in hand. I think if anyone's going to do it, Luke, and I think you're quite right in saying it's going to be Rochdale. If they can find their shooting boots, then they've got more than a chance. But I think just the volume of games they've got to face is going to be that challenge. But the likes of Eastleigh, Southend, Altrincham, I know they're in there they've got to hang in there. They've just got to worry about themselves and see where it takes them. They're in the position they're in because they've been a little bit more inconsistent than they probably would have liked. But they're still within the shout. So, they're going to go full tilt for the next sort of 12 to 14 games.
Moving on to the second to last fixture, your boys up against Tamworth. I think for Wealdstone now, it doesn't really matter how these victories are coming. They just need to keep this momentum up and climb towards safety this season. I think at the moment, you're well on the cards to doing that. But we know with Wealdstone, it can quickly change. And I'm sure you're not getting too ahead of yourself.
No, not at all. It was a real shame we couldn't play. We didn't play Saturday because of we were due to play Aldershot and they were obviously playing in the FA Trophy. We weren't able to play last Tuesday due to a soggy pitch and the weather that we've had. So momentum's been halted slightly. There's hope that there's fresh legs again, and the new management team, Neil Gibson and his team have been able to sort of work a little bit more with the players. We only played Tamworth a few weeks ago. I think it was one of the first games that Neil Gibson took charge of. And, they're a very workman-like side. They play to their strengths. There's no big names in that Tamworth team. They're all lads that have adapted from the National League North, the Northern Premier League, sort of some of the academies, and they've really, really done well. And I think, of all the teams, they probably play to their strengths more than the most I've seen this season in the National League. And that's going to be a tough one for Wealdstone to go there because Tamworth, they're going to still want a few points on the board. They played 35 games. So they played quite a few more than some of the others around them. So, it's not a gimme for Wealdstone. It's not something Tamworth are going to just sort of think, well, if we don't win, it's not a problem. They're going to want to win. And, that's going to be a tough game. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. I think, if Wealdstone come away from there without losing, that's a good point. Considering some of the other fixtures that might help them, having not played Saturday and still not being in the bottom 4, that was a real fillip for us as Wealdstone fans, and we've just got to take advantage of that and try and get a couple more positive results, positive points on the board because we've got a run of some difficult games coming up.
Tamworth have only lost 1 in 6, but they've actually only won 1 in 6. Of course, that came against Ebbsfleet on Saturday, winning 3-2 there. They actually went 1-0 down as well to Ebbsfleet, so they did well to come back in that game. A high-scoring game as well to be involved in. Of course, Wealdstone on decent form themselves. What Wealdstone have done well at, when I look at the moment, is the fact that they're beating the sides they should be beating. For example, Braintree away, maximum points. Of course, they actually went 1-0 down. Ebbsfleet at home. These are games where you could potentially slip up, and they've just found ways to win. They've not done it the easy way. They've not won comfortably, but they've found a way to win. Yeovil, another victory they got away from home, a difficult place to go, yet won that match. As for this one, I think it's 2 sides looking in a positive direction at the moment, and I think it'll be another high-scoring game for both sides. I'm going for a 2-2 draw. Moving on to the final one then. Of course, it is York versus Altrincham. Speaking of game of the game week, what would your game of the game week be this week?
I think you can't look much further than this one, can you, Luke? It's both teams in the playoffs. York have to win. They've got to keep that pressure on Barnet. Altrincham have to win to try and stay in the playoffs because they have got games in hand. So they need the points on the board when they can take them. Alty have got to bounce back from a disappointing result on Saturday. Was Wembley really what they wanted to do? Was it is that now a distraction gone? But, to lose in a quarterfinal of a cup, you have 2 games from Wembley is always a little bit disappointing. It doesn't matter whether that's your focus or not. Really, really good game. Both 2 good footballing sides. There'll probably be a good few thousand there under the lights up at the Stadium of York. So, I think it's a really, really good game to look at. And I think if you're a neutral, maybe aside from some of these 6-pointers at the bottom, which would be interesting to watch because of that, I think from a footballing perspective and a game to highlight the National League, this would be the one to highlight. So I've actually gone with the 2-2 draw. I think, it's because all results are open in this. You can't always say that. I think all results are open in this, and I think it will end up being a draw.
I'm backing York to win this one. I think I've been pretty impressed with how they've reacted to losing to Barnet and then dropping points to Halifax, to be fair. I will give them credit. I think as a fan base, you'd be so frustrated because they've gone to Hartlepool, defeated them, gone to Maidenhead, defeated them. They're finding ways to win. They're not winning in the prettiest fashion, perhaps like Barnet are, but they're finding ways to win. But it just must be so tiring to see and draining to see Barnet. You think Oldham away, that's a game perhaps where Oldham can maybe pick a result up there, and then just put 3 past them. Rochdale away, or Rochdale, they're a side looking to finish inside the playoffs. It's in their hands. You'd like to think Rochdale may be able to get something out of them. Rochdale end up being defeated by 4 to them. They're just so ruthless at Barnet, and it must be so frustrating for York because they're still hanging on in this title race. And if it wasn't for those wins against Hartlepool and Maidenhead, it would be done and dusted more or less now. As for this one being the home side, I think the crowd will really get behind them like they have all season. And they just need to keep this momentum and just hope that Barnet slip up at one point because, yes, it's looking very pretty at Barnet at the moment, but, 1 or 2 defeats and York can be back at top spot once again, and there's still a quarter of the season left to go. So, for me, I don't think it's over yet. I think everyone is backing Barnet to win. You'd like to think they would, but we know this division too well to not see anything see that stranger things have happened. I think York will win this one 3-1. As for Altrincham defeating the FA Trophy, it's really hard to say how that's going to affect them because it's a different competition. I think the fans will try look at that and see it as a positive in some way. The fact that now they can focus on the league and they can look at Rochdale and say, well, Rochdale are now going to be more focused on the FA Trophy. It's a perfect opportunity for us to solidify a playoff spot. But I just think if York turn up, they're going to have too much for them, and I think they will do. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 York win. Anything to finally add before we move on from the predictions and round things up?
No. I mean, an interesting. I think it's a good game week. There's some good matches in there. It's as I say, coming to that business end of the season, there's a lot of teams there still wanting points for one reason or another. There's not, as we said, Lou, there's not many teams that are sort of going to have to go through the motions. So, a really good. I'll be looking forward to tomorrow night at whatever time is it? What sort of 10 o'clock, seeing the how we get on with these results. As I travel back from Tamworth, and let's hope for. I mean, personally, I'm obviously hoping for a Wealdstone win. My head's ruled my heart in terms of the prediction, but I'm hoping for a Wealdstone win, and it'd be nice to see the Stones play away. Haven't been for a while, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, you're going to this one? That'll be a good game.
Yeah. I'll be traveling up to town. I'll go with my mum and dad and my nephew actually. So we got a car for it. There should be a good few Stones fans going. We haven't had a game for a week or so with a couple missing. So we're hoping for a good turnout up at Tamworth, and a new ground for many of us. Them coming into the league, so it's always a nice thing to do is to visit the new grounds. like they're very likely to be there next year, aren't they? In the National League, is whether we are or not. So yeah, I'll be going up to Tamworth to cheer the lads on, and anyone else who's going to go and watch their team tomorrow night. Good luck. Have a safe journey. Enjoy the game, and hopefully you'll get what you want at your team.
Yeah, I enjoyed Tamworth away, to be fair, when I went with Halifax. It will probably surprise a lot. Of course, it's a Tuesday night, but Tamworth as a town's pretty good as well. So, yeah, I enjoyed Tamworth away as well. I know in terms of the Predictions League as well, what else I've got is my Uncle John. I think he keeps track of it in a way. So I think it was York away, right? We were 2-1 up. And then he kept saying throughout the match, oh, you don't want York to equalise, not just because we'd be dropping points, but also because Paul said 2-2, and he remembered that. And then as soon as it went 2-2, he went, oh, yeah, Paul said 2-2, so we've got 3 points. I'm like, yeah, cheers, John, for that. We've just dropped points at the top, and you've reminded me of that. To be honest, I'm more bothered about was actually dropping points, but that was the iceberg, to be honest. And it will be a big deal if I have to wear York top at the end of the season, to be honest. But no, that more or less wraps up the podcast this week. Remember to check out our sponsors' cards accepted. There's a link in the description for you to do that. You get 50% off your card machine if you do that. Remember to like and subscribe as well. Of course, liking gets it out to more people, and subscribing grows the community even more. If you want to become a channel member, it's just £2.99 a month. Custom emojis in the live chat for your club. For example, an Aldershot fan can use an Aldershot badge. Barnet fan can use a Barnet badge. And then also you get exclusive, early access, I should say, exclusively to interviews that we'll produce in the future. An example of that was the Dean Brennan interview that we brought out early for members, as well as the Justin Rees one we did with Southend's owner. That's out to everyone now. So if you want to see that, you can, of course, see that. But yeah, please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in tonight, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.